We want to look at the effects of an increase in the foreign interest rate on domestic equilibrium output and the exchange rate in our IS-LM-UIP diagram. So the initial equilibrium is here. So let's assume the initial equilibrium is, let's plot this initial equilibrium. We know in the IS-LM-UIP diagram, on the left hand side we have the IS-LM curve. Right in here we're taking the domestic interest rate I and domestic output Y. We have our downward sloping IS curve. We have our flat LM horizontal LM curve at the interest rate chosen by the central bank. We've looked at the details for these already. Right, and here we have our UIP figure, which we are going to here we have our UIP figure. On the vertical axis we have the domestic interest rate, on the horizontal axis we have the exchange rate, and we have our upward sloping UIP figure. We've already looked at the details of these figures individually, so we're not going to get into that here. So we know equilibrium is given to us as, so equilibrium, domestic interest rate and domestic output can be found at the intersection of IS and LM curve. So this is A, right? So this is initial equilibrium by A and initial equilibrium interest rate IA. And using the IS-LM figure, we can find out what the equilibrium exchange rate is for a given equilibrium interest rate in the IS-LM model, right? So this is this for I given IA, the equilibrium interest rate in the IS-LM model, the UIP figure tells us the equilibrium exchange rate is EA, right? So this is the initial equilibrium. We've already looked in details about this. So now what happens is foreign interest rate I star increases. As a result of this, the first thing that happens is UIP will shift left. We've already looked at why this happens as well. We looked at, okay, so just over here, let's just specify. We already talked about this. The UIP figure is plotted for given values of I star and expected future exchange rate. And we already discussed when I star or E bar changes, the UIP shifts. So the UIP is going to shift left. When I star increases, UIP is going to shift left because as we recall, as recall, when we write the UIP, it's written like this. So when we were writing, writing UIP, so when we write when we basically took the uncovered interest rate parity condition, solved it for E and took expected future exchange rate as given, right? 1 plus I E bar divided by 1 plus I star. So now what has happened is I star has gone up, so this means E goes down for any given I, right? So E decreases for any given I when I star increases. So basically what has happened is E has gone down for any given I when I star decreases. So this is basically the UIP figure shifting towards the left, right? UIP is going to shift towards the left like we discussed, right? Because now E has gone down for any E has gone down for any given I, right? Like for any given I, now E is lower, so the UIP figure has shifted towards the left. So now this is the UIP given I star prime, the new lower level of I star and E bar, right? We've already discussed the UIP figure. Is basically going to be now like this, right? So the UIP figure is going to shift towards the left. When the UIP figure has gone to the left, so we can see at IA, the exchange rate is no longer EA, it is this, right? So the exchange rate has gone down. The exchange rate and this is now EA prime, right? When UIP shifts towards the left, E goes down for any given I. So for the IA, the equilibrium interest rate is in the model. So now we're no longer at point A. When the UIP shifts towards the left, we're at this point A prime, where the exchange rate is now EA prime, right? So we have a depreciation of currency, right? Depreciation of domestic currency. So this has happened. So what has happened is when UIP figure shifted towards the left, we can see what it caused was the exchange rate to go down. The exchange rate went down because EA prime is less than EA. Because now once the UIP shifted towards the left, you're no longer at point A. The relevant point for the interest rate IA is essentially equal to EA prime now. When exchange rate goes down, the net exports are going to increase. This is assuming Assuming Marshall-Lerner condition holds, which we assume does hold. Assuming Marshall-Lerner condition holds, a depreciation is going to improve net exports. Assuming Marshall-Lerner condition holds. And when net exports increase, we know what happens. The IS shifts towards the right in this case because demand has changed for reasons other than the domestic interest rate, right? And we already discussed IS curve shifts. So the second thing that's going to happen is IS shifts right. Why? Because your demand has gone up for any given domestic interest rate, right? For any factor that affects demand for goods other than the domestic interest rate causes the IS curve to shift towards the right. Here, the change in the foreign interest rate, change the exchange rate, would change net exports. So it's for a reason other than the domestic interest rates, the IS curve shifts towards the right. So this is IS prime. IS curve has shifted towards the right now. So this is IS prime. So this is 2. So now when IS curve shifts towards the right, we can see over here. And when IS curve shifts towards the right, output is going to go up, right? Initially, equilibrium in the IS-LM model was at the intersection of the LM curve and IS curve IS. Now it's at the intersection of the new IS curve because we know equilibrium in the IS-LM model is at the intersection of the IS and LM. Here the relevant IS 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 prime, the LM is unchanged, right? So we can see this is output Y prime which goes up. So when Y increases, so Y increases because Y prime is greater than YA. So in the new equilibrium, so the new equilibrium is A prime, where from UIP diagram on right, we can see E goes down. Why? Because the because UIP curve shifted to left. Right, UIP curve has shifted to left, right? Initially at IA, this was the relevant exchange rate, but now UIP curve has shifted towards the left. So IA, the relevant exchange rate is EA prime, right? Which we plotted over here. And from IS-LM diagram on right, from IS-LM diagram on right, we can see equilibrium Y has gone up and I is unchanged. The equilibrium Y has gone up because IS curve has shifted towards the right. So this moves the equilibrium from A to A prime where the new IS curve and LM curve intersect. So this is how we can show the effects of changes in the foreign interest rate on domestic equilibrium output and the exchange rate. The first shift that happens is the UIP shift towards the left, and that causes the IS curve to shift towards the right.